Starry-eyed rumblings.
The female officer, a few steps behind. A group wearing lab coats, a few steps behind her. No face's movements are slow and deliberate, giving each movement a gravity and foreboding. They don't look at the container. Instead, the featureless face looks straight ahead while they walk up beside the container. Then, they turn their whole body to face the container. The female officer waits till No Face seems to have found a suitable position, then takes her place by his side. The lab coats wait, huddled, shoulders touching, by the entrance, silently. The officer speaks up. It may well be prudent to allow for the team to further develop their understanding of the process and possible complications before attempting a restoration. And perhaps a better location can be found to conduct said restoration. The last, she says, sending her gaze around the cargo bay and straight over Helix Bane, without spotting her. A long silence ensues. Helix Bane watches. Remaining still isn't a problem. The residue coating her skin sticks her comfortably to the wall. And over the past 2 years, standing motionless and staring out into the black, empty forge has occupied most of her time. The officer finally speaks again, this time to the lab coats. Notify me of any abnormalities. At this, one of the lab coats seems about to respond, but thinks better of it. Helix Bane can imagine what they were about to say. I would like to report an anomaly. The thing in the container. Instead, the officer exits the room, and the lab coats, after shuffling hesitantly for a few minutes, get to work. Beyond removing the container from the metal case and doing some much needed gardening on the biological matter above the container, Helix Bane has little idea what the lab coats do over the next several hours. She gets comfortable and watches, motionless. No Face is also utterly motionless. The lab coats seem happy enough to give them a wide berth and work around them. They begin to take a lot of samples from the biological growths and the liquid inside the container, taking some away and doing tests on others. One of them has their full, undivided attention on the terminal. When they finally seem to have completed whatever it is they are doing, and seem ready to move on to the next step, Helix Bane can see no difference in the container, the biological matter, the liquid, or the body inside. However, the lab coats seem content and address No Face for the first time. We are ready. Silence follows. Then, as if struck by a moment of inspiration, the lab coat near the terminal begins to tap away on the screen, and Helix Bane starts to observe some very evident changes. First, the orbs at the end of each tendril begin to glow brighter and apparently hotter. A sweating lab coat rushes from orb to orb, checking its temperature first, and then spraying it with a coolant, which sends steam hissing into the air. Unexpectedly, one of the orbs bursts into a small flame, and this causes quite the commotion, and another lab coat rushes in to put out the flame and stop it spreading to the other orbs. Secondly, the terminal operator says, initiating re-upload. And with that pronouncement, one by one, the orb's lights begin to wink out. As they do so, a white light zips down the tendrils and flashes down the umbilical cord into the floating body, which then lights up in a branching pattern all across its body. As the light travels up to the brain region, assuming this creature has a brain in the usual location. This process alone takes a few hours, after which the operator calls out again. Draining. The thick liquid begins to drain slowly, sticking momentarily to the sides of the container and then draining out of sight. As the container drains, a machine with hundreds of extendable and movable mechanical arms, the ends of which are covered in a soft padded material, is brought in to hold the creature aloft. This process takes just as long, as the lab coats send in various monitoring equipment into the container that hover and swim around the body without touching it, but clearly taking various readings of the liquid and the body. Drainage complete, the operator calls for quarantine. Everyone begins to distance themselves from the container in preparations for the quarantine to be set up. Everyone, that is, except for No Face, who doesn't move an inch. A long silence, and then the operator speaks again. No quarantine. They say this looking at No Face for confirmation, as if No Face will nod like a normal human. No Face doesn't nod, nor make any other indication of confirmation. But moments later, the operator speaks up once more. No quarantine. Helix Bane is not sure how she feels about this last order. She, for one, would very much like a quarantine around this container and the creature within. Instead, the side screens of the container are carefully lifted off, as the top is held in place by a machine. A lucky lab coat removes their coat, dons a full hazmat suit, then approaches the body with a pair of cutting utensils. They look around the room at their colleagues that linger at the very edges of the room in shadow. Then they cut the cord.